Here we go, everybody. Let's get into the MMA session. Here we are to talk about UFC Fight Night De Randemie vs. Ladd with your host, David and the Modern Man. The first fight we'll be covering is the first fight on the prelims, Benito Lopez with a record of 9-1 versus Vince Morales, who's coming in at 9-3. Let's cover Morales first. Morales is your traditional boxer transitioning to MMA. So far in his UFC fights, that's all we've really seen. We haven't seen much of a kicking game or any ground game. Morales prefers to play on the outside, where he'll jab and move, continuing his lateral movement. He uses that movement to come in at angles and throw a fast 1-2. He also displays the ability to use head movement during combinations and exiting out after his combos. His best combination is the jab cross, which he'll throw multiple times throughout the fight, and he'll even switch it up to throw that overhand instead of the cross, going right over his opponent's guard. There's no question Vince wants to make this a boxing match. What can Benito do to counter that style?
He can counter that style by being himself. The fact that he's diverse will throw a standing, jumping knee. The fact that he'll throw a lead front kick to the face is what makes him the person that he is. And those things are what's going to work against someone like Vince. Also, let us not forget, Benito has decent 101 boxing defense. When he throws his jab, he does keep his hands up. He can be overwhelmed by boxing combinations if you bum rush him, but he's still a tough guy, and he still throws back. So for this fight, I'm actually going to still pick Benito, but I don't see him overwhelming Vince. I see this being a competitive fight where Benito's going to have to be on his P's and Q's to make sure that he goes home with a decision win over Vince Morales. I don't see him winning via KO because Vince already showed he has good defense and overall chin to survive against someone like Song Yadong. So that's my pick, decision, Benito, just by being himself. It's a good fight for Benito as long as he stays intelligent. How do you see this fight playing out? What do you got?
I actually agree with you, except on the method. I think Benito's going to be able to take advantage of Vince's high guard and throw the longer combinations, ending with his kick catching him in the third round, finishing with a TKO.
Benito's kicks are going to be a real problem to the liver and when he mixes it up to the head. I'm glad you observed that. So for the next fight of the night, we have Carl Robertson coming in at 7-2 versus Wellington Turman, who's coming in at 15-2. Let's talk Carl Robertson. Carl Robertson comes into this fight with only 2 losses on his record, one being to Glover Teixeira at light heavyweight. So that can be somewhat disregarded considering that he's a true middleweight. The good things about Carl Robertson is that he's a true athlete. The man is fast, very lean, powerful, and has a pretty good gas tank. He knows how to pace himself during his fight so that he's not completely gassed, but he's not completely fresh either coming into the second or third round. Keep that in mind. But what he does do well is throw counter punches. His counter left hooks, his counter straights. He wants his opponents to swing in on him. He wants his opponents to be the aggressive one. He'll somewhat keep his hands down, try to bait them in. He has some really good head movement. A little bit too big of movements for me. I can see him being countered by kicks at the higher echelons in the UFC. But at these stages, he has very good boxing head movement to where he evades most people's entire combinations to only end up landing his own left hook on them. He primarily fights in southpaw, and when he's in the southpaw, he'll throw some very long, extended crosses out of nowhere. With no setup, not even throwing jabs, he just throws his nice cross out there. Usually ends up landing on people. He throws the ability to take people down when he wants to. If he's under fire or if he's pushed up behind the double black lines, he'll actually show a takedown to try to get people off him so he doesn't take pressure without showing some kind of resistance. To me, he looks like a good future middleweight contender, even with his potential holes in his defensive submission game. How do you see this fight going with both of these guys having very good or respectable records?
I'm glad you brought up the records because Wellington is making his debut. And he's only 22 years old, yet he has 17 professional MMA fights under his belt. Wellington finds most of his success when he takes the center octagon. He chooses to throw single strikes for the most part to keep his opponent against the fence, and he'll lull his opponent throwing single strikes. When he does throw combinations, it's to rush his opponent and force his opponent against the fence. This is where he does his best work. He's shown to be able to finish you in a variety of ways, with 4 knockouts and 7 submissions on his record. Although Wellington has more fights on his record than Robertson, I think his style just plays into what you mentioned about Carl Robertson. That's why I'm going to go with Robertson, second round knockout. How do you see this one going?
I see this being an exciting fight when they decide to actually engage with one another. Because the way I initially see this fight going is these guys both sticking to the outside, throwing jabs at each other, trying to find holes and individual strikes on each other. Both of them like to throw single strikes. Both of them are trying to find one big bomb or trying to use their athleticism to take advantage of their opponent. They're not going to be able to do that to each other in this fight. So at some point, they're going to start throwing bombs at each other. So at that point, when they start throwing bombs at each other and actually engaging more, which will be around the second round is what I'm guessing, considering the first round will be a feeling out process, Carl Robertson will find his way home with a hard left-hand counter and get a TKO KO victory. Second round, victory for Carl Robertson.
The next fight on the card is Josh Emmett, who's 14-2 versus Mirsad Bektic at 13-1. Mirsad Bektic first entered the UFC already well-rounded. Since his move from TriStar, he's been able to utilize all his tools for a specific game plan, and we've seen the success in his last couple fights. He does a great job of fighting behind his jab. He uses it to cover distance, often throwing double jabs, triple jabs, and along with his hand speed, he's able to finish his combination and exit before his opponent can counter. He also likes to enter with flurries, overwhelming his opponent, and then quickly shooting for the double leg, which he has successfully implemented in the UFC with almost 4 takedowns a fight. Half of his output of significant strikes come from the ground, which is enough to take out most, or at least earn him the decision. What are some ways Josh Emmett can mitigate this skill set?
This is another one where I see it being a matchup where the fighter just needs to be himself. Josh Emmett is already a very strong wrestler, short, stocky fighter, low to the ground, comes from a really wrestling-heavy camp. Someone like Bektic is someone that's going to get knocked out by Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett is a very strong man, but he still uses his fundamental boxing skills, and he still has athletic potential. He's not very fast as a bantamweight because of how powerful and stocky he is, but neither is Bektic. But it's not because Bektic is so powerful. It's actually because Bektic is just not very efficient or fluid as a striker, while Josh Emmett still is. He just lacks speed. But this will not be a problem for Emmett in a fight against Bektic. Bektic is still going to get caught up in the striking with Josh Emmett. He's going to have a hard time taking Josh Emmett down. He's not going to be able to get physical with him or push him against the cage and bully him. Josh Emmett is going to show Bektic right away in the first round that he has hammers in his hands and he's too hard to take down. Bektic's going to start backing up and end up getting knocked out in the first round by Josh Emmett. Not trying to put Bektic down. He definitely has a very good camp behind him. He's going to have good fundamental boxing defense, but he's going to have no offensive potential against Josh Emmett. And that's the real problem here in this fight, unless you see something different.
I see the fight going slightly different. At least the first round. I think Mirsad is going to be able to take down Emmett. He just does a real good job of mixing his strikes and quickly shooting. He shoots just as quick as he punches. However, I see Emmett still getting the knockout in the second round.
So for the co-main event of the evening, we have the legendary bantamweight Urijah Faber coming in at 34-10 against the young lion Ricky Simone. If there's any draw on this card, we can say it's in Urijah Faber. He's coming back off his quote-unquote retirement. God only knows what that means in MMA, right?
Yeah, 2 years isn't a lot.
But the reason Urijah Faber did end up retiring was because he was having up and down success in MMA. He showed the ability to beat gatekeepers like Brad Pickett and Frankie Saenz, but he couldn't beat top-level contenders like Jimmy Rivera or Frankie Edgar, and he lost in his title contention versus Dominic Cruz. So for the most part, he wasn't doing horribly. He just wasn't able to beat title contenders, so he decided to retire, which is good for his health and all, and I think was the actual correct choice, because Urijah Faber hasn't really evolved in his career. He's still essentially a wrestle boxer. He doesn't have much kicks, doesn't have much head movement, and all he's done is lost speed. And as a bantamweight, that's really important. And to go against someone like Ricky Simone, I'm going to see that as being a big issue as well. I do not see this as a favorable matchup for someone like Urijah Faber, though I am a fan.
Well, Ricky Simone is definitely going to test out how fit Urijah still is. Ricky Simone is a wrestler, and he's going to grind you. That's how he gets his wins. He's also very tough. We saw in the Mirsad fight, Mirsad was dominating those first 2 rounds, and Ricky showed his toughness by hanging in there and ultimately getting the submission to end the fight. Faber's never been known to possess knockout power, and I don't think he's going to hang in there with Ricky Simone's cardio. That's why I'm going with Simone with the decision win. I expect him to grind out Faber, take him down multiple times, just accumulate that top control time. How do you see this going?
What I think we're going to see is Ricky Simone doing to Urijah Faber what Urijah Faber usually does to other people. Boxing them up, level changing on them, and taking them down. And grinding them out, like you said. Yeah, I can see Ricky Simone taking Urijah Faber down, but I see him getting back up. This is mostly going to be a boxing/kickboxing fight to me, where Ricky Simone's going to show to have more speed, agility, youth, and athleticism. It should be a decision victory for Ricky Simone over the legendary Urijah Faber, with no disrespect intended. But with all that being said, let us move to the main event of the evening.
And the last fight of the night, we got undefeated Aspen Ladd with 8 wins versus Germaine De Randemie with a record of 8-3. Aspen Ladd is a ground and pound specialist. She's looking to walk you down, take anything you throw at her with a high guard, absorbing anything you throw at her until she gets you against the fence. She's always fighting for underhooks and usually finds herself with double underhooks, getting that body lock and hip tossing her opponent, which is her favorite move. From that takedown, she'll find herself in quarter guard where she can start unloading on strikes and get that full mount where she has been known to land devastating strikes. What can you tell us about Germaine?
I can't tell you anything that hasn't already been said. Former UFC champion, longtime Muay Thai champion. She's known as a woman who has the skills and ability to beat up a man in one-on-one combat. Germaine comes into a fight with one objective, and that's to actually do damage to her opponents. She fights somewhat like a dude, not trying to be offensive. She's a Muay Thai fighter all the way through. She has a high guard, stands upright, walks her opponents down, is consistently looking to do damage, whether it be low leg kicks, body kicks, or just coming in with some hooks. Though she is a Muay Thai striker, she has adapted for MMA, so she does have a moderate takedown defense, and she does have the ability to actually move off the center line when she's being attacked defensively. She's not just a walking machine and operator. She does have the ability to move away from charging blitzes and counter with devastating strikes. She did it actually quite efficiently to Holly Holm. I think Aspen Ladd is going to end up biting off more than she can chew. I see Germaine just chewing her up on the feet, and when they do clinch, doing damage. And if she does get taken down by Aspen Ladd, I see her getting up quite quickly and consistently doing damage every opportunity she gets. That's one of her greatest attributes, is that she's very aggressive and opportunistic, to the point that she'll end up hitting you after the bell sometimes. Haha, not trying to throw shade. So, I'm going to go with Germaine in this fight. I see her winning this fight 4th round with a TKO over Aspen Ladd. She's going to be too much, have accumulated too much damage, and end up taking her out.
You highlight some great points, specifically in the clinch. As we saw, Lena Landsberg and Tanya Evinger were able to find success in the clinch, outmaneuvering Ladd, and were able to land multiple successful knees to the body, along with elbows. And I see Germaine's striking prowess being a huge problem for Ladd, considering her stand-up game is still unrefined and basic. She also struggles with her defense in boxing range. She likes to keep her hands on her face, and against an elite striker like De Randemie, her combinations are going to come in quick and fluid. And if the rematch against Eubanks showed us anything, it showed us you can definitely outbox Ladd and overwhelm her, take advantage of her high guard, throwing hooks around her guard, and being the first one to strike and catching her with straights down the middle. Ladd is going to be tough to take out. However, I see De Randemie finishing her in the 5th round TKO.
So those are our night of predictions. We ain't dissing nor dismissing. We just hitting. And that's the MMA session. With David and the Modern Man. Peace.